Hello and welcome. I'm always waiting for the point.
I know. I really feel like we should just go where it comes in.
We go when we go, and producer David can just figure it out.
However it works.
Well, here's how it works here. Welcome to the Heights Unedited Podcast, featuring a real conversation about real life, not just a real conversation, real conversations.
Real conversations.
About real life, where we dig deeper into the weekend message, as well as answering your questions on faith, culture, and life. And like always, my name is Todd, and I'm here with John.
You have quite the radio voice.
I know you like it.
Not gonna lie.
I know.
You call me John. Good job.
I know, and I looked at you to see if you would notice, and you didn't even notice.
Well, I was enamored by your voice for a minute there.
So nobody's focused on anything I'm saying. They're just like, wow, this radio voice is really killing it.
It's like, whoa, where did that come from?
You know, it's honed over many years of practice. I used to be a little kid sitting in the mirror just practicing
my own radio show. And now you're just living the dream.
Now I'm living the dream. This has always been the dream.
Living the dream. So how are you doing after the weekend?
Doing after the weekend. Doing good. Yeah.
Did you wake up tired?
Yeah. You know how Monday is after you speak in the weekend? It's like, you know, I don't think many people listening or watching know, but there's been many studies done on the physiological effect it has on you when you speak on stage. And
what's the most shocking one to you?
Well, it's just the recovery piece of it. So one of the studies shows that each time that you speak, if you do a 30, 40-minute talk, you have anywhere between 4 and 6 adrenaline spikes during that time. And your body just naturally does them. And each one takes like 5 hours to come down from. So when you add up a 4 weekend services, you're not actually fully recovered till like Wednesday. And that's pretty crazy.
That explains a lot.
It does. The tiredness on Monday is for real.
It explains by Wednesday, you're just starting to feel normal again.
Yeah. You're like, I think I'm good. Let's do it again. Yeah. Every weekend.
Yeah. What are the adrenal glands back here? There was a speaker that came to Heights and we were chatting about that because he ended up going to the doctor because he's pretty animated, pretty, you know him, Chris Brown. You know Chris Brown.
Yep.
And they found out that it was affecting his adrenal glands speaking. So he had different recovery but true. You know, I didn't speak this weekend. So most people think I didn't work this week.
So yeah, you're good to go. You're all revved up and ready to hit the road. All right. Well, thank you to all of our viewers and listeners, whether you're watching on YouTube, whether you are listening, wherever you get your podcasts.
Okay. I had a question. Why are we calling them listeners?
Because they're not viewing it. They're just listening. If you're podcasting,
are they just the online fam?
They are just online fam, but they're also
things you think about when you're not standing on stage.
Fam.
In-person fam.
Yeah, because this is for everyone. So, yeah. And we do have some 5-star reviews coming in. Another 5-star review from Lil Potts fam.
Lil Potts fam.
Lil Potts family.
Shout out.
I know the Potts family. They are amazing. They're awesome. I get to say hi to them almost every week when they check their kiddos in. If I'm over there,
good people for a long, long time.
Here's what Lil Potts family has to say: just real people that love Jesus, having real conversations. I love it. Then they say, just keep the hot toddies coming.
Keep them coming. Those takes.
And PJ is the best. There it is.
Peanut butter and jelly? Is that what that is?
That's exactly what they meant there. They did not mean good old Pastor John.
Man.
Thank
hot
you so
takes.
much.
You got any today? We got one.
We'll see what comes out. You never know. I mean, with the layer of tiredness, you never know what comes out of my mouth.
Okay, so let's do this. It's not on your outline, but so game tonight. Who wins? Hot toddy take.
Hot toddy take is I want the Chiefs to lose.
There
it is. That's all I have for that.
I don't know that that's a take.
Yeah, that's not a take. So, but more expectations too is if Travis Kelce, which it doesn't go against, it goes against what I just said because I want the Chiefs to lose. But if Travis Kelce scores me a lot of points, then I win in our fantasy league. And
16 points, people start praying.
Yep, that's right. That's what we need. So
here's the thing then. So your hot take is Travis Kelce goes off, Chiefs still lose.
There we go.
There you go. Hot take.
That's what we want.
Here first.
That's what we want. Here first. But again, thanks for the reviews. Please help. If you have a 5-star review for us, send it in. We'll read it on here. Sorry, I don't get to.
We're gonna do a giveaway at some point.
You really want to do a giveaway?
I want to do a giveaway. Well, if people are like helping us out, we can show some love.
Yeah, we can figure it out.
We'll give away his white sweatshirt from the
David
weekend.
figured out. Yeah. And nobody noticed it was Halloween and I dressed up like you. That's what I did this weekend.
Are you serious? Was that for real?
There it is. I mean, you'll never know.
Or did Rachel dress you?
Well, Rachel always dresses me.
Okay, so that's why you look so good.
Oh, there we go. I see what you did there. You turned it around. But let's go, because we're pretty much, people have tuned us out at this point.
Yeah, they're gone.
They're gone. But we do have some questions that we're going to get to today. First question is actually from me to you, John. And here's why, because you have done something that is, I don't want to say it's a goal because it doesn't necessarily fully rest on us, but you've done something that I aspire to do so much in life, and that you have raised. You have 4 daughters. I have 5 daughters, and you're ahead of me in the raising of daughters. And you have daughters who are grown out of the house and still follow, love, and serve Jesus. And I aspire that more than anything that I do. And so my question to you in that is just, what are some of the things that you intentionally did as a parent to raise kids that love and follow Jesus?
Man, that's a big question.
Well, I don't know. It's hard to boil it down to like a few things.
I feel like I'm not an expert yet because I still got 2 at home. You know, I feel like until those 2 walk with Jesus when they don't have to, right? Because we're not around or whatever. Like, I think then I'll celebrate. But I think for my older 2, absolutely. I mean, you'll get this. My biggest fear was they'll hate the church, right? Mm-hmm. Dad works for the church, so my biggest fear was I just don't want them to hate the church or be scarred by the church to where they don't want anything to do with it. And so I think normalizing church, we never made it to where you have to go. We never made it something that was a chore to go to. We never made walking with Jesus this weird, like, okay, you have to do it for 15 minutes every single day or else you don't, right? Yeah. Like, something we learned was we backed off that too much. And so with Bailey and Farrah, we've actually stepped in to like have more repetition for them in like encouraging Bailey to sit in the morning and center herself, right? So there's stuff we've learned because we backed so far off with the first ones going, we don't want you to think a relationship with Jesus is just that 15 minutes, right? And so, and then normalizing faith in life. Like I can remember, sitting with my kids through high school, doing coffee with them every week, right? They had a spot that couldn't be touched by anything else. And you would sit with them, but talking about real stuff like, hey, tell me about your friends. Tell me about like, how did that feel when that one did this? Or, hey, how do you respond to that? How do you still love them? And tried to make walking with Jesus something that was practical in life, not just, hey, I have my Jesus piece over here and that's my church life. And now it was like integrated into the whole. So soccer teams, how do you lead out from your soccer team and show your faith in those spaces? Yeah. And so I think probably the easiest answer is consistency of, hey, we're going to live our faith, but then also like just normalizing this is what it is, whether you were born into a pastor's family or you were born into, whatever vocation, like this is just how we follow Jesus. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this because it's my question, so I get a follow up.
You get
question,
to do whatever you want.
When people write in questions, they don't get the opportunity to do a follow up. Yeah. But how do you handle the situations where when you're talking about life or things that come up and you ask them about their friend group or whatever it is, and the way that they're either handling it or what's happening, you want to correct so much? Like, how do you balance the correction piece with the love and listen piece? Because sometimes I feel like, man, I don't want to come off as the parent that like, if you share something with me, then I'm going to jump down your throat and say, well, you should have done it this way. Yep. But I also am like, I can't watch this train wreck happen in front of me. So, how do you balance those two?
Yeah. I mean, maybe a real example that comes to mind, and hopefully she's okay with me sharing this. It's unedited. So here we go.
There we go.
So Sierra, all of her friends in high school were non-Christians. And so there's this huge fear, like as a dad, of what kind of influence and what kind of and we pray. What's interesting with Sierra, we prayed we prayed for all of them, but specifically with Sierra, we prayed for a friend, right? A Christian friend that she could just do all of life with. Rylan had it. And so they would attend youth group together. Well, Sierra never had that. And then one day I'm sitting at coffee and she goes, Dad, what? She might have told me before, but I remember specifically chatting at coffee about it. But she goes, Dad, so 2 of my friends, both girls now, started dating each other in her friend group. Mm-hmm. She goes, what do I do? How do I? And, you know, from a dad perspective, like the alarm bells are going off of like, okay, what does this mean for her? What does this influence? Why? All of that stuff, right? And I just said, well, how did you treat her before? She said, well, I just loved her for who she was. I said, well, keep doing it.
Yeah.
Right? Like keep doing that piece of it. Don't change who she is to you because of choices she's making. But it's like in that moment, there's no control over if she does that or not. There's no control over, is she going to stand for faith or not? Or you could have said this or not. And so I think that coaching, but not freaking out in that moment, right? That's the listening and just,
yeah.
Okay, right? This is where we are, right? And then, you know, one of our friends who had come out as a lesbian decided to, or didn't decide to, Sierra's like, hey, I want to have her over to the house. I want to, you know, and so you just, again, it's normalizing your faith, right? This is somebody Jesus loves deeply.
Right.
And these are the people that God has answered our prayers with for my kid to walk with. And so you just, to me, you walk through those situations. And there's times, man, where it was like you want them to do something totally different, but instead of controlling, it's like, how do I redirect? Mm-hmm. How do I put a fresh thought in your mind? How do I have a conversation of, okay, that's fine for this, but what does this mean for this person long term? And what's crazy is, to my knowledge, all of those girls that Sierra grew up with still reach out to her and are still friends with her, even from, you know, a distance or whatever.
Yeah.
And so it's hard. I think that's the rubber of faith meeting the road. And you couple that with Sierra was our kid that went, I don't want to go to youth group. I'm not enjoying it. I'm not, right. Like I'd backed out as a youth pastor. So now I've got all this guilt of like, should have stayed in and she would have enjoyed, you know, like, and instead her not going to youth and having unsaved friends, it just meant as parents, we had to step in and be fully present in conversation. So, yeah.
No, that's good. Thanks for being open and sharing those, because I know those are real examples. Those are real things. And I think there's a balance in a parenting of how you render your kids of, we are going to just shelter them from everyone who's a non-Christian, or we are going to allow them to be in that world for the purpose of being able to live out their faith and share Jesus. But there's risks that come with that. And that's the route that we've chosen as parents, is we want our kids to have friends that are not Christians. We want them to be surrounded by them, because we want them to understand the mission that Jesus has put them on. But again, there's risks that come with that, and who they're surrounded with and the influences they have and all of those things. So I appreciate your perspective on that.
And I think too, man, it's like, and you get this, the future isn't them living in a Christian bubble.
Right.
The future is they walk on a campus, right? Where you release all control.
Yeah.
Where you don't know if they came home. Like, we can do the dad thing and go on our phone and go, hey, their phone's in their room. That doesn't mean they're there.
Yeah.
Right. And so, you know, that we're preparing them for those days, not making all the decisions for them today. Right. And it changes, obviously, age of kids and all of that. But
yeah. I heard someone say one time that we often think of 18 as the finish line. If I can just get them to 18, and really that's getting them to the starting line. And everything you do for 18 years until they get out of your house is to prepare them for the starting line. That's when they're running that race,
really good.
You know? So
it's really good. That's a hot toddy take.
There it is. Hot toddy
Start
take.
line.
I don't know. So I didn't say it. Someone else did, but moving on though, first of all, thanks for answering that question, but let's get into the weekend. Listen, I got to tell you, lesser known people in the Bible are fascinating. Fascinating, because I would not have looked them up unless you said, hey, topic is lesser known people in the New Testament. And I'm like, well, let me check them out. And I've read those names before.
Yeah.
But never
Which great job pronouncing them this weekend.
I had to Google it. I had to Google it and listen to videos of how they were pronounced so that I knew how to say them.
Yeah. I've been there.
Just people that I would never have taken the time to dive into, read them, glossed over them, but just fascinating to see that and to look at. I mean, I'm exactly the message that I delivered this weekend, I've been so guilty of only viewing Paul did everything in the early church.
Yeah.
Well, no, he didn't.
Yeah.
Obviously, there were so many other people doing it, but I just don't think of those lesser roles, if you will.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because I don't know how you feel, but I even get to those sections of like reading a book of the Bible and just gloss over like his outro, so to speak, where it's just a list of names, tell so-and-so and this one. And I mean, I rarely, outside of doing it for a message or whatever, slow down to go, wait, who were they? What did they do? What part did they play? Yeah. And so it's cool. I thought, man, it was phenomenal how you walk through them was amazing and pointed out specifically different things. They weren't all in the same lane even, right? Like one is just kind to people.
They're just nice. That's it. And I'm trying to figure out what else did this guy do?
How simple does that make our faith, right? Just be nice.
Just be nice. Which is a lot harder to do than it is to just say, be nice.
Day before the election, man, it's real out here. Be nice to people.
Well, yeah, the election piece, I didn't even touch that, but so much just be nice. Driving, that's what I was talking about. That's hard. Yeah. And then driving home that afternoon, my wife was like, you remember what you said about driving? I was like, yes, I know.
I thought you were going to reference Bob. You ever driven with Bob?
Yeah, it's an adventure.
Yeah. He doesn't like people that, either tail him or drive slow.
Yeah.
So
Bob, we could do a whole episode on Bob. He's the guy that
Bobisms.
Loves people more than anyone I know and can't stand people more than anyone I know. It's wonderful. It's awesome.
It's a gift.
Okay, speaking of minor people in the Bible, who would you say is your favorite minor person in the Bible? Old Testament, New Testament are so different because you literally have minor prophets that are like called that. Right. But like, there's people that are barely mentioned that I think are super awesome.
Yeah, that's wow. One that always comes to mind is it Simon of Cyrene who carried the cross for Jesus?
Yep.
Like the dude came out of nowhere and is like a pivotal part of the story.
Yeah.
But again, just being present, being there. I think I've the women that helped Jesus ministry that never get any kudos. Like even in the Christian world, they just don't get spoken of, and yet they were the backbone of the ministry for Jesus to be able to do what he did. So they're my favorites. But
yeah, I would say for me, like the women, I didn't get to highlight all out of any of them this weekend. Some in Paul's letters, but none in Jesus's life.
Yeah,
that man, those women did so much for the gospel and really get glossed over a lot of times. And I think
one of my favorite with them is Herod's wife is mentioned as she was funding Jesus's ministry. So you've got Herod's wife funding. It's like, how in the world did that work?
How did that happen? How did he let that happen? That's crazy. One of the things we talked about this weekend is our tendency as humans to give God what we want instead of just saying, God, here I am, and allowing him to be the one to push us. So let's just talk about that idea. One of the things I said was we need to quit giving God our plans and start giving him our hands.
Yeah. Which, again, you're a wordsmith, so that as soon as I heard it, I'm like, it's so good. That is not a gift I have.
I don't know.
So where do they come from? Where do those phrases come from? When
I'm just thinking about really the heart of it all. Like and I've been so guilty of it in so many ways. Even just knowing where God wants me in ministry. After already saying, I'm going into ministry, God, I'm going to serve you. I'm going to be a pastor full time. And then still telling God how I want that to look.
Yep. And
just realizing like, man, God is God, I'm not. And so just getting to the heart of it and realizing like, man, I try to give God my plans, and God's just saying, hey, just give me your hands. That's all I need. Just be open-handed with it. The idea of open-handed and close-handed is a big one. So it's like, man, but I think oftentimes that's what we do in the church. And I've seen people do it in every church and in Heights as well.
Yeah. Because it felt like this weekend you were going down a specific, like whether it's, I feel like we often speak out of experiences, right? And so we've been on this heavy serve team, especially in the next gen world, like trying to build those teams. What have you seen with people that become a hindrance to them being able to step in because they're and they don't even know it, right? They're not intentionally going, I'm not giving God my, like my plans are my plans and God's got it. I don't think they enter with that kind of thought process, but I feel like probably since the summer for you guys, there's been a lot of those moments where you see people doing that and not even knowing it. What does that look like?
Yeah, I think a lot of times it's not necessarily in the context that this is where it's like telling God how we're going to serve and the things around it, like saying, one of the things I think I said on only one of the weekend services this weekend, but we were talking about next week there's going to be an opportunity for people to sign up to serve. And I said something along the lines of, and what you're not going to see is an opportunity to sign up to preach on a weekend. Yeah. That's not going to be one of the opportunities that there is. Yeah. But oftentimes we look at the big job, if you will, and go, that's the one that's important. I want to do that. So that's more of the context here. I would say answering your question though is really the sacrifice of time, because people have a schedule, and a lot of times God is serving, faith, Christianity, God, church, all of those things in one are just like a little side thing. I think about when my kids get dinner and I'm like, you need vegetables on your plate, and they put like one little tiny piece of broccoli. That's what people want to do with God and church. They want to just add a little side and go, but don't touch the rest of everything else I have going on. My plans are my plans. This is my life. This is my time. And maybe I can add you in somewhere else. And I think that we need to switch that and say, okay, my plan really doesn't matter. Here's my hands, God. What do you want me to do? And I'm not saying abandoning our families. I'm not saying not abandoning our jobs, but I think that we need to take a serious look at saying, are we trying to just add God, Jesus, serving in church into what we do? Or are we saying, no, this is what I'm about? Yeah. Because that goes back to what we said this weekend. When Jesus is at the center, it changes even the little things that we do, even the tiny position that we do. If Jesus is at the center, then he is the main thing. He's not added to the side. Yeah, I think maybe just hang here for a minute, because I think the tension people feel is life is full, right? Like life is already full, and now the church is asking for, and I wonder if, like, where's the conversation, or where do you see? Because you're in that realm, like you got kids in 4 different activities, something like that, right? And then you've got your own coaching thing you're doing on the side, right? Like, and then you've also got the school pickup and drop off and everything else that goes along with school. And I wonder if there's not a practical encouragement for people, like just finding wisdom between, well, I want to give God my hands, but where does wisdom come in with, like, not setting such a rigid plan for God, but being realistic of, hey, I have kids that are there Wednesday night. Yeah. Maybe I'll just serve Wednesday. Yeah. Or, and not feeling like, well, God, you can only have Wednesday, but being realistic with, hey, I'm there on a Sunday morning. You know what? Maybe I'll go serve the second service and attend the first one and have my kids serve with me. Like anything on that side of how you've seen that, like with serve teams, be something that is just realistic to life, even for somebody in your life stage. Yeah. Well, you when you have a lot of kids, you have a lot of activities, and you have a lot of things going on, you have to have a schedule. Yeah. And I think that if you don't schedule in time, I mean, the real example for me with my life right now is if I don't schedule in specific time with my wife, it just won't happen. Yeah. And it's important, so I do it. But you have to schedule in other things as well. And I think serving is one of the things that you can schedule in and say, hey, this is something we can do. But I would 100% agree with what you said. I always find it funny when people say, oh, I just don't have time. Yeah. Well, but you're there on a Sunday anyway. Just stay one extra hour. I promise you do have one extra hour. But a lot of times we're, don't want to give up that hour for whatever reason. Yeah. But if you're going to take your kids on a Wednesday night, help on a Wednesday night, you're already there. Yeah. You don't, by the time you drop them off and head home and then come back, you've spent 15 minutes at home anyway. Yeah. So there's nothing really too important at that point. So I think there's ways to just fit in that maybe just as well. Tagging onto that then with your giving, start giving him your hands. I wonder if it's the importance of my hands being his and building that in first. Yeah. So when it comes to time, or it comes to choosing, like, hey, I'm going to set up what's important.
And here's the 5 things that are important. And my hands being available to God is important. And putting that into whatever rhythms and time and all of that. So super good, man. Super good.
Well, I appreciate that. And one of the things that I talked about this weekend as well is this idea of long obedience. And you can't give me any credit for wordsmithing this because we did this all as a group here at Sermon Prep. But the idea was long obedience in the same direction with Jesus at the center leads to the life you were created for in Jesus. And I think that concept is so crucial for us to understand. And it's one that's been so hard for me to understand because I like the big. Yeah. I like man, you did this amazing thing. And I think that you achieve, for lack of a better word, greatness by doing these big things. When in reality, anybody that at the end of their life, you go, man, they lived an amazing life. It was never one big giant thing or even 2 big giant things. It was an unbelievable life of faithfulness, doing long obedience in the same direction.
Yeah. It reminds me, this is going to sound really weird. It reminds me of, I heard an interview and the guy, he was interviewing a soccer player and the guy's actually Egyptian, the soccer player, super well-known, plays for Liverpool, but he has an 8-pack, right? Like he's just ripped. And so
like abs?
Yeah. Like just super ripped. I mean, this guy, model, sculpted body, whatever. So the guy who was interviewing
kind of like me.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
More like Bob. But
there we go.
But so he was asking him, how is it possible, like, to end up with the physique that you have? And the guy goes, it starts before the weight room. The guy's like, what do you mean? He goes, it starts with what you eat. And he started going through these lists of food that he doesn't eat. And the guy that was interviewing him goes, well, that's out. I'm never going to have that. Right. Like, because it comes back to like the obedience in that sense. We understand it, right? Physically, if I'm going to do something, like you don't start with your heaviest bench first, right? You start and work your way up to where you go, but it's this consistency and slow build. And I think in the Christian life, I think because maybe it has to do with salvation, because of the way we come in is it is such a big bang moment event. You're baptized, you're like there's all these, but when rubber meets the road, it's this, okay, I'm going to do these really small things, these acts of obedience over and over and over. And then you get to a point where I'm at an age now where I'm looking back at stuff, right? And you start to go, wow, I never thought this was possible in my 20s, right? Yeah. Like I never thought intimacy with God was a thing that I would crave, right? Like, and yet there are days when I'm just longing to, can I shut everything off and just go sit and be with God?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think it's interesting. We see it in so many other spaces and we would say yes to that. And yet when it comes to our faith, like Jesus at the center and sitting there.
Yeah. And just
it's just a slow grind.
And it's just faithful with the day in front of you, with the thing in front of you, with whatever it is, that those are the people that have impacts. I mean, in any area, you look back and you go, yeah, I remember them 10 years ago. I remember them now. They're doing the same little things and just faithful with it. And we have so many of them in our church. I was glad I got to highlight a few, but man, there's just so many people that I would say that this isn't a, man, none of you are doing this. We have so many people that have showed up faithfully, and that creates the environment that we have of people.
Yeah. It makes me think of Salsa Mark, right?
Yeah.
He's what, 5,000 deep now?
Yeah. He
started at 1.
Yep.
And he's just been faithful. Weekend after weekend after weekend. Saturday when no one sees him praying over his salsa. It's those things that nobody sees.
Yeah.
And yet it's just that long obedience.
Yeah. And that the people that we talked about in the scriptures, I don't think Paul decided to write about them in his letter because they did it one time.
Yeah.
They were faithful. They made an impact. Fun
the
weekend.
Guy that prayed earnestly, right? Like,
yeah,
you don't get the title "prayed earnestly" because you prayed at dinner.
Yeah, I wish that you could. It was that quick, but well, let's hop into some more questions. Fun weekend, but let's wrap that one up. We're done with that. Let's go. Let's go into some questions now.
Before we wrap that one up, what's happening this weekend with it? Serve team wise.
Serve team this weekend, opportunity to sign up. So if you are listening or viewing this before the weekend, just know coming this weekend, you're going to have a lot of different ministries represented. And the reason they're represented is because we want you to have a conversation with them. What does this look like? How can I get involved? What do you need? What are the time commitments? All those kind of conversations. But thinking about it now, what are some ways that God might want you to step in? And you'll have an opportunity to sign up for those this weekend, which
is awesome.
We're excited about. So, okay, question. We got a question from Anonymous.
Annie
did not want us to know their name on this one. And here's why. Question is, what is the best advice you can give to someone navigating a breakup?
Oh, man. That's a good question.
What you got?
That's a painful question.
Have you navigated a breakup before?
A long time ago.
It's been a while.
But we don't need to go there.
too unedited here.
We don't need to go there. Advice you would give someone. It depends. It's the context matters so much, right?
Yeah, there's so much you could say here. I think maybe just some quick advice.
I think shred every. No, I'm just kidding. I think guard your emotions. I think guard your forgiveness. Bitterness will want to grow. Mm-hmm. Guard yourself from social media. Don't go looking at what the person's doing. I think stepping away from, that world will allow for healing. I think putting yourself around someone that you can have an honest conversation with, that can pray for you, that can encourage you, somebody who's ahead on that journey, and just know you'll be okay. You'll be okay. Your heart will heal. But I think what's that line about rented space? Not giving somebody rented space.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I'm not sure.
Like unforgiveness does that, right? Like we allow them to live without paying rent. Mm-hmm. And I think protecting yourself from that with your emotions, your mind, and then obviously give yourself time. Like I think the worst thing you can do is jump back into another relationship.
Yeah,
just give yourself time to heal.
Yeah, that's good. Very good. I was just going to say time heals and the sun's going to come up. You're going to work through it. It's going to be better.
In the meantime, there's ice cream. There's all kinds of candy out there. There's coffee.
Great coping mechanisms, John. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
that's good.
You just gotta. Some days the best thing you can do is sit out and eat some ice cream.
Yeah, that's good. Well, hopefully that answers just a little bit of practical advice for that one. We do have one more question for you as well, for us as well. Samantha asks, I grew up in church and have always known tithing is something Christians are supposed to do. Heights talks about it often, but my husband and I are struggling putting it into practice. Are we sinning by not tithing? Is it really a commandment for Christians?
That's another.
You said when you were younger you didn't like talking about money. Now you're good at it. So this one's all you.
I think first of all, let's address the whole: are we sinning by not tithing? Mm-hmm. I don't think it's a sin. Okay, I don't think it's a. It's the same as if you don't serve, right? We would never look at somebody for not serving and go, "Oh, well, you're sinning," right? Like you just wouldn't do that. I think you can look at it and go, God has a specific design for us to live, right? Like when He created us, there's a design to us that's best practice lived, and that design is my heart belongs to Him, not something else.
Okay.
And so with Jesus, you look over and over with money. He's always referring back to, or there's always a strong connection with Jesus to the heart, right? Like he's getting at something much deeper through this very physical means. And so I think in this case, when it comes to money and it comes to tithing, I've latched onto, instead of tithing, because there's such negative connotations from my growing up, right? Like there's such a negative to it that for me it's this ancient rhythm. Right. And if I think about it in the context of an ancient rhythm, it has to do with looking at human history. What did God intend? And why, if it's not a big deal to God, then why is it in every generation in the Bible, God has got them living out this ancient rhythm? And then you get to Jesus and hear what Jesus said about it. And then you hear what Paul has to say about it. And it's all connected to the best way to live, living free, right? So not living a slave to something. And so if I'm holding money and I don't want to release money, well, it's probably got a hold on me then, right? Like, and so I think with that, it's this idea of okay, to live free, this ancient rhythm helps me to do that. What's the ancient rhythm? That I give God's out of the top of what I get, God gets the first. And that's me releasing my heart to what's there. Now, how much? What should you give? How does that work? I think 10% is a great place to start. But I think walking with God and God going, hey, how do I release more and more? Because it's back to what you said earlier, right? Living with hands closed or hands open. And the more we live with the hands open, the more we go, hey, God, it's yours to begin with. What do you want to do with it?
Yeah.
And I love my favorite, I've taught on it, but my favorite is Corinthians, where it talks about that God's the one that puts the seed in the hand, right? And as I sow with it, God looks at it and goes, hey, I can get it through you. I'm going to put more and more and more into your hands because I can trust you with it.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a twofold. One, it's releasing my heart. The other piece is it's a way that I show that I trust God and that God can trust me with what he gives. And so back to the question, how do you figure it out, putting it into practice? That's the hard part. Because a lot of times we're already living above our means. And so to think of 10% as like,
yeah, like I'm looking at the numbers here. It's not possible. Yeah.
And so that's where I would say, again, it's back to heart. What can we start with this year? Okay, we're going to do 3% this year. And we're just going to be back to obedience. We're going to be faithful with that 3% no matter what. And see what happens over the next year. See what God does. See if we missed it, right? Like there's just so many ways that you can kind of carve that up. But I would say if you're genuinely, I don't know how the numbers make it, start with something and see what God does in that time. Commit to a time.
Yeah, I would say one of the things that Heights does so well is reframe the idea of tithing. Because even in this question, Samantha says sinning, commandment, all of these, it's very religious practice. And I think that the stereotype, or not stereotype, the stigma of just tithing in the church in general is very religiosity. Yeah. And I think understanding a heart behind it is super important in the way that it's framed. Yeah. I'm not saying we reframe it in a different way than anyone else. I think we get more to the heart of what it's supposed to be, which isn't a commandment that's tied to sinning, but more of a overflow of the heart that's centered on Jesus. And, you know, the Bible says, be a cheerful giver. Well, it's hard when you don't have money in your bank account to give what you don't have. But when you understand that it starts on a heart centered on Jesus and it overflows into a joyful act, then the idea of a joy box makes sense. Then the idea of, you know, doing that. So I think the framing of understanding tithing changes it all. So I mean, I think when you understand that, it even makes this question asked in a different way. So hopefully that answers for Samantha what that is.
And I think too, right? Like the only reason that it would be taught as a commandment nowadays, like post Jesus, post the cross, right, is because we want people to act a certain way, right? So the idea would be this, that you or I stand on a stage and we demand, right? Like if you're going to be a good Christian or you're going to not sin, you're going to do this, right? Well, that's about control and that's just going to cause harm in the long run versus, like you said, reframing something to fit inside of this grand narrative that God's been writing that actually fits within the heart and the character and the nature of God, going, wait, God wants something for me in this. He wants freedom for me inside of this thing that humanly doesn't make sense, right? And that's the difference, I think, is I think anytime it's taught as a command, it's probably because there's an element of control coming from whatever leader you're around.
Right. Yeah, and that's what makes it so hard to talk about money in church, right?
Yeah.
People just come in and go, well, this is what churches do. They're going to ask for my money.
Yeah. Well, and the reality is the church is the vehicle God uses, right? So yes, you give your ancient rhythm to the church, but within that's part of the problem, right? Because we've seen the church as something it's not. So you got to reframe the church. Well, what is the church? Well, that is God's method to bring the good news, life-changing good news to the entire planet. It's never been about a building, an organization. It's been about a group of people representing Jesus that, yes, when we put our money together, we should be able to do so much more in getting the good news out. And so even that needs reframing to, well, what are you actually giving it to? Right. And that's where the stories from the last month are so important.
Yeah. All right. Well, hopefully that answers that, man. We've been everywhere today, from parenting to relationships to money.
You know where we haven't been?
Where have we not been?
Formula One.
There we go.
Did you see the race?
I saw a little bit of it. I didn't see all. It was rainy. I saw that.
If you are not a fan of F1, that's the one to go watch.
Yeah, rainy.
It's insane.
So I was having a conversation with my dad this last weekend, because my dad is really into cars and stuff. So we're looking at watching the sprint race the day before and watching it. And he goes, "Would you get behind the wheel?" And I'm like, "Heck yeah, I'd get behind the wheel." Then it rains the next day, and I was like, "Heck no, I won't get behind the wheel. That would be insane."
It's crazy
with the rain everywhere. But
anyway, now we've been there.
Good way to end a show. There, now we can end it. We've talked about everything. But if you are still around with us, congratulations, you made it to the end of the podcast club. We still don't know if there's a giveaway for that too. There we go. That's your prize, is you get to hear PJ do
David
that.
Still doesn't have it yet, so until he does.
But I would love to encourage you, if you have a question, go ahead and submit it.
How do they do that?
Unedited at heightschurch.com. Email it to us at any time. Right? It pops up in your life and you're like at school pickup, send us an email.
Yeah.
All right. You're in an argument with your friend who's an atheist and they ask a question that you don't know how to answer. Send us an email.
Ask Todd, why is the sky blue?
Ask me whatever you need to do. Go ahead, send it in.
He's got a hot toddy.
Unedited at heightschurch.com. Again, rating, reviewing really helps us get the word out, but really it comes down to people like you supporting us, and we love you for that. Thank you guys so much for being with us today, and we will see you back next week. We won't see you, but you'll see us.
Yeah.
Peace.
We'll be back.